On a chilly Monday morning, 15-year-old Emily Carter, dressed simply in her school uniform, walked into Oak Bank, one of the most prestigious banks in the city. The $5,000 check in her hand was not just a scholarship earned through her outstanding academic performance, but also a symbol of the independence she had built over the years. Emily's feelings were a mix of pride and nervousness. Today, she didn't want to rely on anyone, not even her parents. This was the moment she had been waiting for, her first important financial transaction on her own. Without the protection of adults, her light but firm footsteps stopped at the counter. She gently placed the check on the counter, her hand still gripping a folder containing all the necessary documents. Despite this being her first time at the bank alone, Emily felt mature enough to do everything correctly. In her own way, she couldn't afford to hesitate, even though she felt a bit anxious. Behind the counter stood Victoria Hayes, the bank manager, a sharp and confident woman whose gaze immediately locked onto Emily. The $5,000 check she was holding quickly drew attention. Though only a student, this check was proof that Emily had achieved something many could only dream of: success through her own efforts and dedication. Emily handed the check to her with confidence. But inside, she couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive. Little did she know, she was about to face a challenge much bigger than she had imagined. When Emily placed the check on the counter, not one but two sets of eyes, from Victoria Hayes and Tom, the bank teller, quickly scanned it. A tense atmosphere spread throughout the bank. Victoria, with her polished appearance and confidence, raised an eyebrow as she looked at the $5,000 check, a large amount for a student. Unable to hide her surprise, she spoke just loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. "With this amount? For a student like you, I'm really curious where it's from." Victoria's words weren't quite a question, but more of a subtle insinuation. Although Emily had prepared all the necessary documentation to prove her scholarship, her hands trembled slightly as she handed over her student ID and the scholarship award letter. She tried to remain calm, but the anxiety she felt was hard to conceal. "It's my academic scholarship," Emily explained, her voice quiet but firm. "I earned it through my excellent academic performance." Tom, the young bank teller, slowly took the check, his gaze never leaving it, as if looking for a clue of any mistake. He gently flipped it over and examined it under the light, as if investigating a crime. A sense of numbness washed over Emily as she realized that it wasn't her talent or efforts that were being recognized, but rather her appearance and race, which had become the factors leading to her being suspected. To make it clearer, Victoria casually approached, not even sparing a glance at Emily. She spoke to Tom in a condescending tone. "We've had a lot of fraudulent checks recently. We'll need to verify everything." Those words struck Emily like a slap in the face, making her feel like she wasn't just a student but a criminal being questioned in what should have been a proud moment. Amidst the bustling bank, Emily stood silently, with no one coming near to inquire or comfort her. A growing sense of isolation and neglect began to take over her mind. While the customers around her were treated with warmth and friendliness, their gazes toward her seemed filled with strange skepticism. Whispers started to circulate, loud enough for her to hear. Yet no one spoke up in her defense. The other customers conversed with each other with smiles and warmth, but all Emily could feel was the cold indifference from the bank staff. The feeling of being excluded wasn't new to Emily, but today, it was heavier than ever. She had heard about racism before, read stories about injustice, but she never imagined she would have to experience it so directly and painfully. The whispers between Victoria and Tom were no longer just vague doubts. She overheard Victoria saying, "We need to maintain high standards. We can't just let anyone walk in and expect to be treated like they belong here." It wasn't just a warning about a fraudulent check. It was a reminder, dripping with arrogance, that she, a young black girl, didn't belong here, regardless of her academic achievements. The discrimination wasn't because of her ability or merit. It was because of her appearance and the skin color she could never change. As minutes passed, Emily's self-esteem was slowly being chipped away. She stood still in the corner of the bank, with every eye in the room seeming to be focused on her. As if she were a criminal being watched. Every whispered word, every curious look, only deepened her isolation. She couldn't do anything but remain silent. But inside, her anger and the sense of injustice surged fiercely. When Emily stood there, she couldn't help but realize that what she was facing wasn't just a lack of respect or a delay in her transaction, but a blatant act of discrimination. Victoria Hayes, with her smug and confident demeanor, clearly displayed her contempt. The cold glances, the subtle remarks, didn't just make Emily feel like she didn't belong here. They made her realize a painful truth. Racism was happening right before her eyes. Subtly but unmistakably, Victoria didn't even try to hide her dissatisfaction. She walked past Emily, not giving her a single glance, only to turn around when Emily's words no longer seemed convincing. She walked over, not looking directly at Emily, but turning to Tom, the bank teller, to whisper suspicions. "We can't let people like her into this space. We can't treat them like regular customers," Victoria said, her voice cold and dismissive. Emily couldn't avoid hearing it, though she tried to look away to avoid confronting the discrimination. Her self-respect was badly hurt. How could she bear it when the very people responsible for safeguarding customers treated her like an outsider? Someone who didn't deserve respect, even though she had worked so hard to get here, to prove that she deserved this scholarship. Internally, anger bubbled up. She told herself to stay strong, but she couldn't deny that, despite all her academic achievements, she was still treated as someone who didn't belong. She wasn't just a black girl in Victoria's eyes. She was a person not worthy of being in this space, not deserving of respect like other customers. After hours of waiting, the loneliness and humiliation became too much for Emily. Though she kept standing firm, every passing second seemed to stretch endlessly, and the injustice inside her felt like an open wound that couldn't heal. Just then, a shift in the atmosphere filled the bank. The door opened, and a woman walked in, exuding grace, strength, and power. It was Dr. Rachel Carter, Emily's mother. Immediately, everyone's gaze in the bank turned to her, not because of her sudden appearance, but because of the confidence and authority she radiated with every step. Dr. Carter was a renowned financial expert, someone who had built her career with her own skills and expertise. Everyone in the bank, including Victoria, knew that she was someone with the power to change things with a single decision. Victoria, who had been so proud of putting a young girl through this humiliation, straightened up immediately and forced a polite smile upon seeing Dr. Carter. But instead of returning the greeting, Dr. Carter simply walked past her, her gaze stopping at Emily. Seeing her daughter alone in the corner, looking pale with exhaustion, Dr. Carter couldn't hide her anger. A wave of emotions washed over her, but she quickly masked them with her usual calm demeanor. Her question wasn't a greeting, but a deep concern. "Emily, are you okay?" Looking into her mother's eyes, full of worry and love, Emily felt a surge of strength. This wasn't just a confrontation between a young girl and discrimination. This was a family's unyielding fight against injustice. A family that would never accept inequality in any form. When Dr. Rachel Carter approached Emily, the atmosphere in the bank shifted dramatically. The silence that had existed earlier was replaced with an unusual tension. All eyes were on her, a woman who not only stood out for her elegant appearance but also carried within her the power and authority few dared challenge. After observing the silence and Victoria's condescending attitude, Dr. Carter wasted no time in standing up for her daughter. "Victoria," she began, her voice cold but determined, "I think we need to talk about the way you treat customers here. Especially my daughter." Victoria, no longer able to maintain her initial confidence, was forced to face the truth. The entire bank fell silent, and everyone realized that Dr. Carter was not a customer to be dismissed. She continued, her tone unwavering, "This isn't just about a delayed transaction. I know exactly what's been happening here. You've been misleading both me and my daughter, and I have enough evidence to take this further." At that moment, Victoria's eyes flashed with panic. She hadn't anticipated the situation escalating this far. But Dr. Carter didn't stop there. This isn't about a check or a delayed process. This is about discrimination, about the fact that you don't see my daughter as a customer, but as someone who doesn't belong here. And I will not stand for that. The silence in the room was palpable, and the people around began to realize that what was unfolding wasn't just a minor issue with banking procedures. This was the unveiling of wrongdoing, a stark reminder to everyone about how unacceptable discrimination was in a society where everyone deserved to be treated equally. Dr. Carter used her influence and power not only to protect her daughter, but also to deliver a powerful message: injustice would never be tolerated. After Victoria was immediately fired, the bank became more than just a place for financial transactions. It became a symbol of change. Dr. Rachel Carter didn't just defend her daughter, she taught everyone a profound lesson about fairness and the right to be treated equally, regardless of race or background. When Victoria was escorted out of the bank, the remaining people in the room could not help but feel the tension ease. But more importantly, they realized that one person's actions could change an entire system. Discrimination could not be ignored, whether it happened in a bank, an institution, or any environment. Dr. Carter not only spoke up for Emily, but she also stood up to fight for a fairer society, where everyone had the right to be treated with respect and dignity. The subsequent investigation revealed not only Victoria's misconduct but also sparked a major overhaul of how the bank operated. New training programs on equality and fairness were implemented, and new leadership was brought in to ensure that no one would ever suffer discrimination while exercising their rights. For Emily, that day became more than just a challenge, it was a pivotal moment in her life. She not only learned the lesson of resilience, but also the importance of using her voice to create change. This lesson wasn't just for her, but for all of us, no matter how faced with injustice. We all have the right to stand up and fight for truth, fairness, and our rights.